Joining us now from Washington, D.C. is Phyllis Bennis. She's a fellow at the Institute for Policy Studies. Phyllis, thank you very much for staying with us here on Al Jazeera. So Ali was just telling us how the Iranian system is built to withstand pressure, and we've seen that in protests in the past. Are we seeing the same kind of resilience from the government this time, do you think?
It's very hard to say how the government is responding so far, but I think what we can say is that this set of protests is quite different than earlier ones, particularly in the breadth of the population that are involved in it. The role of the business sector, the bazaris, who play a very key role within the Iranian economy, is new. And that brings some additional pressure to bear on the administration, on the government. So how they will respond, I don't think we know yet. They have responded so far, as we do know, with a great deal of repression. Many people have been killed. We don't really know valid numbers yet, but it's been a very violent and repressive reaction. Whether there's going to be more serious change in the government as a result, it's still too early to tell. I think the one thing we do know is that U.S. intervention is almost certain to make that situation worse and not better for the protesters, for those who are hoping for change in the government.
Well, the U.S. president today said that the killings are stopping, referring to executions, and that we will see what happens next. What do you read into those comments?
I read into it that he's either making it up, as he has on other issues, or he is trying to convince us of something without giving a source that would make it seem credible. He was pushed on the issue by reporters and refused to say who his source was. He said it was a very high-ranking source on the other side. I'm not sure what he meant by the other side. Does he mean the Iranian government who stand opposed, or does he just mean someone in Iran said this? Or does he just mean that it's something that somebody reported and we don't even know whether it has any validity or not? So it's very dicey. I don't think it's anything that we can rely on. There's not been, as far as I know, any confirmation yet from any sources that might be more credible of the claim that there have been no more killings. There was confirmation that the one execution that was known to have been scheduled from today did not happen. It was not canceled, but it did not take place today, which is a good sign that maybe it won't happen. But in terms of the response of the government to the protesters in the streets, I don't think we have any basis to know whether that's true or not.
Phyllis, if the U.S. does decide to intervene in any way, shape, or form, how would protesters be best served in this instance by that?
I think the best intervention that the U.S. could carry out would be to end the sanctions. The sanctions have devastated Iran socially, politically, and especially economically. The economic crisis that really gave rise to this massive set of protests that have been going on now for 2 weeks are rooted very much in the crippling U.S. sanctions that have been in place for so long. It has prevented access to key medicines for the healthcare system in Iran. It has made food too expensive, certainly for poor people, and now even middle class and upper middle class people, we're hearing, are having a very hard time putting food on the table. And the other interventions that we've seen in the past, such as the U.S. attack on Iran when it joined with Israel back in June of this past year, led to greater levels of repression, not less. So I think that the only useful intervention that the protesters would help their cause would be an end to sanctions.
And when you mentioned that things have gotten worse since the war that happened in June for people in Iran, obviously we've seen the snapback mechanism put back in place and more pressure on the economy, which was the catalyst for these protests in the first place. But if Iran's conditions for going back to the negotiating table have not changed, how does the diplomatic window reopen, or how does it crack open further to continue talks between the West and Iran?
I don't think we should assume that there can be no change in the Iranian negotiating position any more than we should assume that it's impossible for the U.S. to resume negotiations. President Trump made a decision in 2018 to walk away, to abandon the Iran nuclear deal that had been negotiated 3 years earlier by the Obama administration, that can be reversed. That's not something that is set in stone. And I think that there's no reason in the world not to think that there could not be negotiations that perhaps start with the terms of that agreement and then move further. The Trump position at first, during his first term, was that the agreement was insufficient. If he wants to argue that, let him go back to that agreement and see what is possible to move forward. But the notion that you somehow can't go forward with any kind of negotiations because right now the relations between the two governments is so toxic because largely of the U.S. Attack directly on Iran in 6 months ago, when several hundred people were killed as a result of that. And the Israeli part that lasted for 12 days was fought largely with U.S. supplied weapons. So the U.S. is very culpable in the context of how Iranians understand and how we should understand what that war was about. This was a war by the United States against Iran. One hopes that they would be willing and that our own government would come to its senses and recognize the importance of resuming negotiations. This is how there's some hope of bringing about an end to the kind of repression that the Iranian people are seeing right now, and of averting the threat of a much greater war than the one that we saw 6 months ago.
Phyllis Bennis joining us from Washington, D.C. Thank you. We appreciate your insight here on Al Jazeera.
Thank you.